Hello, multi-cluster folk.
Greetings.
Hello.
Customary 2 more minutes here. How's everybody's Tuesday?
It's good.
That's how I feel about Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, all I think about right now is the new Dune movie, so I can talk about that, but otherwise,
Pretty
nothing.
great.
It's
I
really
enjoyed it.
great.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm
I have to
going
admit, I rewatched the original this weekend.
Nice.
I did that too last week, and then managed to see the new one on the way back from skiing on opening day with my wife. I liked it.
Cool.
Okay, where are you located that you were able to ski?
Seattle, and we finally got some snow. It was great.
Yes, okay. I heard
Yeah, this week is
Vancouver.
the week, I hear.
Yeah.
Or this past 2 weeks was finally there's some snow.
No mud on the hill at all. It was wonderful. It was a really nice day. Just took a few extra months.
Yeah. Too bad.
Yeah,
But
we're
you-
like opposite. I'm over in Toronto and we go like east towards Vermont and it's like 10 degrees centigrade and I think it's raining in Vermont, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Next week and that's just not going to be in the cards.
Yeah. No Mount St. Louis or Blue Mountain this year.
Yeah, no, we were thinking Jay Peaks or
Okay.
or Sunshine or Sunday River, I think it is. So we cross down into the US. It's always a little better there.
Yeah. I grew up in Toronto, so
Oh, sweet.
like Talisman, Blue Mountain, those were my
Yep. Yeah, no, after you go like west towards the Rockies or east to like Mont Tremblant, you just can't go to those other hills
completely
anymore.
ruined. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just breaks
Although
it for me.
I will say that there's those days where it's icy over here, and a lot of the Northwest people say like, "Oh, it's terrible," and I go, "What do you mean? This is that's what I learned on." Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, well, I guess with that, with 3 after, might as well get started. So thanks everyone for joining the SIG Multicluster meeting on Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. I believe we've got the one topic today, or we have a couple topics. So Mike and Mike, I'll hand it off to you to talk about naming for cluster inventory.
Thank you. Let me try to share this. Oh, that the screen sharing is disabled, but I can give
Of course it is. Hold on. One day I'll get the hang of this. Okay, there you go. It should work now.
Yep. Thank you. Right. I just want to. So it's pretty important. First of all, the cluster inventory API, or it's called inventory cluster right now, has been merged. Thank you again for the review and all the feedback from the community. Um, as recommended by Jeremy, I opened another PR to further this discussion, whether it's renaming or what Laura is gonna about to discuss the storing some of the API access info, so we can do more of a push model thing. So those can go immediately right after into this PR. Before this discussion that I'm trying to drive right now, and I don't think Mike is here, but basically there were some comments about, hey, the current name, which is inventory cluster, doesn't really follow the sort of the standard Kubernetes convention. So I'm a little bit back and forth on this. When I read Mike's comment, I sort of agreed that, oh yeah, it does sound a little bit weird, but after I try to come up with some alternative, because I really like the word inventory. So I try to have like cluster inventory member, cluster inventory item, etc. But it just doesn't flow through naturally as well. And then inventory cluster sort of means that it's an inventory, but it's a cluster for that inventory, and that might help in the future where we might have some other type of CRD for the inventories, so like inventory profile, for example. So I don't know. I'm a bit back and forth on this. And then I created another survey, which I didn't get many response yet. So I just want to bring it up in the meeting. I want to gather some really good ideas and some guidance on this topic because it is really important. Because once we rename it, it's hard to rename. So please go.
When I clicked the new survey link, I got the old survey, or it said I already took the survey.
Oh, I see. I resetted the results. I thought that it'll reset for everyone. I will. Yes, I will do a
Oh,
tutorial
okay.
on that, and I
Weird.
will recreate
Yeah.
it. I'll recreate it.
Okay.
I got lazy. I thought I just reset the results and then that'll be it. But yep.
I mean, that would make sense, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think like this is the hardest problem in computer science, right? Naming. So I think it's like happy to do another round and throw everything out there. I also find inventory cluster just a little weird grammatically, but I think it does kind of fit um, the pattern if you squint. You know, I don't think it's awful, but like I'm fine if we want to do another round, but I guarantee you whatever we come up with in the survey, there will be a group of people who think it's terrible, and that seems very, very hard to avoid. Um, so you know, happy to support another round for sure, but I just want to kind of caution if we come back to the same result, um, like this is hard. This is very hard.
Yes, it is.
I think also the caveat with a survey is that we're largely speaking to and asking questions of the people who are already engaged and already have opinions about this versus thinking like what's going to make sense to people who have not used this API yet, but who we want to understand how to use it in the future.
Right, but hopefully the people on the survey are taking that lens.
Yeah, hopefully.
Like the real problem we have here is like we have a sampling bias, as you say, to folks engaged in Kubernetes.
Hello? Did I get lost or did Jeremy?
Nope, I'm still here.
Jeremy's audio dropped.
Yeah, I dropped weirdly earlier too, so I feel like something's like weird. I am going to. Oh, there Okay. I'm kind of Jeremy. I'm stealing your time while you disappeared. But I just wanted to kind of like plus one about how inventory cluster, right, is like, I get that it's kind of weird. I'm also okay with it. And that cluster profile and cluster record are both interesting to me. And to Mike's point, like if we wanted to like widen the sampling group, there would be like a lot more effort we would have to put in, but that is something we could like decide to try to do, I guess.
Yep, I can definitely share the survey outside of our community, like maybe in the Argo CD community and in the other communities that are interested in this project. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I can try that and see how it goes. But yeah, it's definitely hard to get the right naming. But maybe my pool of options are not that great. I mean, I guess we can take a look. I mean, I don't know if it's show any bias. I've noticed the pattern, even though they're whatever I put on top usually wins out. So
Well, that might be because you're putting like the normie ones on top, you know,
okay,
like
okay.
Cluster Manifesto. While I love it for its excitement, I see why you didn't put it number one. I do think there's a way in SurveyMonkey you can have it randomize the choices if you feel like that's an important part of the bias. But yeah, I mean, I do know, like from my own experience running surveys against like the multi-cluster email list, like it's really small group. So you either just got to like take that and like we, you know, chat about it until we feel good about it enough and kind of like go with it, or find a way to like broaden the user base. And I think like other communities like Argo, et cetera, is like a great idea. That's not as painful as recruiting like users individually. But still like I feel has an argument of like why these people would be interested in this topic, you know? So
Right. So how do you feel about the? Can you mention how do you feel about the cluster profile and cluster record again
yeah,
versus
just
inventory cluster?
yeah, just I mean like my 2 cents, I guess, is that cluster profile and cluster record feel very like they feel better in the sense that they're like individual, you know, instances of a cluster kind of, whereas cluster inventory is kind of like talking about the whole thing, and inventory cluster, as we've discussed, like feels backwards just because like of the way we've written lots of other things, and it implies that like the kind is like of a list of inventory clusters, just like the way that things have been named. And I guess also how English works a little bit. I'm not sure that's that I'm not grammar, but anyways, yeah, so that's my 2 cents. Again, I understand where like the backstory of like inventory cluster versus cluster inventory came from, so it's easier to swallow the like backwardsliness, I guess, of inventory cluster. But yeah, that was my thoughts. And I think profile and record are like kind of like common but like concrete words, I think, that get used in like an inventory type of thing. So like that nuance is added, whereas like insight or representation are really like abstract and not like, I don't know, sound kind of, insight sounds producty. Manifesto, we've already discussed, is cool, but kind of like metal. And then portrait, discovery, those also feel like more closer to what insight is saying. And then status has overlap with like the status field that maybe we want to reference, but also I think we don't. And then shadow is scary. The end.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. I think Oh,
Sorry,
Jeremy
can
wants
you
to
hear
say
me?
something. Yeah.
I fixed it. Yeah, I just when I read profile and record, to me they both feel like they're absolutely fine, but they feel like filler words. And because really what we're just trying to say is cluster, and we're not calling it a cluster because cluster API has a cluster. Is that the main reason? Is that the only reason? And
that is
do we
the
feel
main reason.
okay? Because given that, do we feel like these significantly differentiate like cluster profile, is that significantly differentiated from cluster in terms of cluster API? And if not, one potentially horrible idea is to actually just call it cluster, because these will be, scoped to SIG MC, which is not great. I think having two cluster resources, but that is why there is scoping in CRD names. Because the concern is that we go with something that has technically a different name but is not obviously differentiated. That I just kind of want to throw that out there. I'm fine with all of them, but if we're going to explore something that isn't obviously differentiated, I do want to ask, like, do we need to differentiate at all? Like, maybe it's just cluster.
Okay, I didn't have that in the option. I'll definitely add that into one of the option. But that's actually a great idea as well.
My initial thought on cluster, and I think this was already brought up by somebody else in the issue, is that cluster makes sense in cluster API because it is creating a cluster. In this API, we are not necessarily trying to create a cluster with this resource. We are using it to describe an existing cluster. So I think that it's nuanced, but there is a bit of a distinction between the purpose of what we're doing here. Yeah, cluster metadata would be fine. Something like that. I think it's very similar to profiler record.
Okay, thank you for the feedback. So, any other more opinions? I have a few to-dos, adding I guess adding a bit more history and description, and then so I can share it to more of the external community, and hopefully we get more participation. If not, we're just gonna have to come to a conclusion ourselves, and hopefully we have a name that everyone agrees on. I don't want to take any more time. Any last minute comment, feedback?
So one thing I forget about was initially we called this because our cap is called the cluster inventory. I forget exactly. There was a comment about the order doesn't make sense about this name because it's again it's a nuance of English grammar. Cluster inventory. Initially we thought this was as everybody knows, it's kind of representation of this cluster, not a state of this cluster. It doesn't drive this cluster's change. It's a reflecting of what this cluster's current, whatever record status profile inventory is. So we call it cluster inventory. And then somehow someone mentioned that this name is backward, but I don't remember why it's backward. And so that's why we flipped it back, so it becomes inventory cluster.
Yeah, I can shed light on that because I remember the discussion. I think the weird thing about cluster inventory is if that was the resource, it like the inventory is like the set of these
it's
records.
Oh, I see. It's a pearl, right? Not right. Is that the
Yeah,
reason?
like the inventory describes all of them. So having each one be a cluster inventory would be like you'd expect it then to have a list of clusters.
I see. No, I remember. And that makes sense. Yeah. So it's not a inventory implies a pearl basically, multiple ones, and this is actually describing one of them. So what is the say we have we want to describe a cluster inventory as a list. What do we call an individual one in an inventory? What is the idiomatic way to call a single item in an inventory?
So the normal way would be a cluster. Like
Yeah.
The cluster inventory contains clusters.
Oh. So cluster inventory contains clusters. Okay. So in that sense, that would make sense. But from the but problem is in our group name, there's no inventory at all. So the API version is just multi-cluster Kubernetes. And then the kindness cluster, then there's the inventory idea just disappeared. How can we still have this when we put all the clusters together? It's an inventory. How do we get that back then?
I think it just describes the concept. So like it's okay if the end like the concept of cluster inventory is I think still held true even if we lose the word entirely. I mean to me this KEP in general still makes sense.
Yeah, a list of items. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Just want to remind myself why we had this discussion from the beginning. Thanks.
Yeah, I think in the cap, I actually kept a few instances of cluster inventory in that order as well, because the concept of cluster inventory still applies, as Jeremy mentioned, but it's just a matter of the naming of the API. So if I search here, yeah. So we still have a few mention of cluster inventory in the cap. Okay, thank you for that comment, Ryan. I guess that is all for me.
Okay, I'm gonna take over then. Hold on. Yeah, this. Share screen. Okay. Okay, I won't take too much time because I didn't get to prepare as much as I wanted to, but I want to follow up on last time we were talking about the aspect of how cluster inventory would be more useful, especially to small integration stories, if it wasn't just a list of clusters and some tags about them, but also like a means to store and establish connections to those clusters, like a way to store the credentials from whatever has the cluster inventory in it to all the other clusters. We talked a little bit about how like a larger scale, or depending on the like vendor, that might be like much more specific to a vendor than anything we can generically state using only Kubernetes primitives, but that there is a case of basically a common case where people will store kubeconfigs in secrets, or point to kubeconfigs and secrets, and that this is a pattern that we could represent in either this version or upcoming version of cluster inventory, and kind of like establish that that's like a thing that you could do. And so we could increase the adoption of cluster inventory for those smaller integration stories. And a specific case was multi-queue. So that's what we were talking last time. I started putting some slides together, but they are super ugly and boring because it's only these 3 slides. I'm so embarrassed. But the important thing I wanted to get across is that I still think that this is important to discuss. I do think that there's the just general like getting cluster inventory off the ground is like also the highest priority, but I would like to personally, and with anybody else who's interested, spend some brain space on this, especially before KubeCon, because I won't be there. But I want to like kind of seed the conversation a little bit about it to make sure that like it can be discussed. And I started pulling together like I used multi-queue as an example, but I'm also collecting other examples of this type of thing where people will just use secrets and point to their kube config. So we kind of have like a inventory of the examples that are like this, so that anybody who isn't familiar with it can see. And I do think that there's some sort of like bigger questions that we maybe don't need to answer right now, but I would like to like address or get like first thoughts on, so that it can help us decide like how much of this needs to like be discussed sooner rather than later. One big one that is probably down the lane, but is definitely going to come up, I think, is the concern about the credentials getting out of date, and what the prerogative is for this, feature of cluster inventory to like say how provide an implementation, or probably not that, but at least like say how that needs to be handled. Stuff for like a TTL, or like if there's a like refresh rate required, or that you establish, or that things know what date that they were last, time that they were last updated or whatever. That's the type of thing we could say. Just the overall optional question. And also like if you do include if you're using, like, if it's required, if present. So like this, there's a similarity in MCS when we like took endpoint slices, endpoint slices, like made them optional. But like if you do include them, they have to follow this format. So like that kind of energy, if we feel that that gives enough flexibility while still making it like tool chain compatible, and then just how we want to establish or link up with any other best practices related to like external secret stores and stuff. So yeah, these are like the swirly thoughts in my head, and as you can see, they became only like a little bit of slides. So I'm happy to open some discussion now, but in particular, because it's sort of unformed, I plan to do like a working session this same time, but next week when we're not meeting, just like if people want to drop by, because I suck at starting something super async. And then maybe there will, like, if people are interested, or if the people who are interested want to meet another time, that's also fine too. Just DM me and we can figure it out. But that's the type of things I want to talk about and get kind of like a first, first draft going. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking about and what I want to do. And if there's any comments on this immediately or whatever thoughts to share right now in this forum, I am all ears.
Laura, I think the working group meeting is awesome. Do you want to ping the mailing list and just see
Yes, I
if there's
do.
a better time?
Okay.
Because I think something tells me that if we ask the folks in this room, this time is fine.
Yeah, I guess like that's true. And I mean, like, I kind of thought that was good just because there were people, well, I think Eduardo here is here and Jack was here last time too, like wanted to talk about it. So I know that like this time zone confluence maybe works, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have something for that time. So yeah, scheduling so fun, but let's do it. I will totally do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, even if I'm Central European, I attend meetings in Australia time zone and California time zone. So feel free to, like, I'm always looking to collaborate. So yeah, I will attend any meeting.
Okay. I'll like this time next week will be like the plan B, and then I'm going to send out an email and like people who are most interested. I'll make a doodle. I hate doodles, but I totally will do it. And we will find a time, and then we'll fall back to next Tuesday, 9:30 Pacific.
Perfect. That sounds great. Did anyone else have anything they want to bring up today? Otherwise, I think we can get a little bit of time back. All right. Well, with that, I think we are at time. So thanks for the discussion. I hope we can resolve the name, again, the hardest problem. And yeah, looking forward to more discussion on how we deal with accessing these clusters. And also just bookkeeping, I think I actually already did cancel the next meeting because it coincides with KubeCon. But just so everyone knows, there will be no SIG meeting during KubeCon, but hopefully some of us will be able to meet up in person there. Happy Tuesday.
Cool. See ya.
Thank you all. Bye.